can't wait to touch your body. I can't wait to touch your body. If we ain't gotta tell nobody. I can't wait to touch your body. Roll a couple L's, light it up, baby blaze up. Body so good, you can have my first one. I can take you down tonight. Hold you to the morning light. Go another round, this is round three. Couple more blows, knock you out around three.
Here?
Very well, thank
Good
you.
morning and welcome to Criminal Justice Insider. I'm Babs RAWLS-IVY.
And I'm Jeff Grant.
Did I say Babs RAWLS-IVY?
Babs RAWLS-IVY? Babs RAWLS-IVY. I love that.
I like that.
I like that.
Babs RAWLS-IVY.
Like Lou Rawlsy.
I'm a little Babs. I'm a little RAWLS-IVY.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good morning, Babs. And we are here courtesy of
The Community Foundation.
for
Greater New Haven.
now more than ever.
Yay.
Good morning, Babs.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good.
Enjoying this weather?
Yes, a little cold.
Happy Black History Month.
Oh, yeah. And why are you wearing red today?
Go Red for Women. It's the American Heart Disease.
All right.
For women. So if you see women today wearing red, it's because we are in solidarity to raise awareness around heart disease, which is the #1 killer of women.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're wearing red. You should have told me. I didn't get the memo. I would have worn red for you.
All right, so we have guests this morning in studio.
We do.
Welcome, Jeffrey Deskovic. He's an internationally recognized wrongful conviction expert and founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has freed 7 wrongfully convicted people and helped pass legislation aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. Jeff is an advisory board member of the coalition group It Can Happen to You, which spearheaded a 6-year fight resulting in the passage of the country's first commission on prosecutor conduct. So he's going to be here to talk about that. This is a side of criminal justice we don't often hear about.
Yeah, you know, I am very happy that we are starting to bring on people who are involved in some of the other topics. You know, the main thrust of criminal justice had to kind of progress far enough so that some of these other issues, prosecutorial misconduct, wrongful conviction, certainly white collar, could kind of emerge and start to get some attention. And certainly Jeffrey, having been to prison and for 16 years and been exonerated after 16 years, is a great spokesman for the wrongful conviction, prosecutorial misconduct movement. Any news that you want to talk about that's gone on for the last 2 weeks since I saw you?
Oh my gosh! Shout out to Andrew Kaplan and Lynn Springer.
Hello.
Hey,
Andrew,
fam.
Lynn. Hey.
And I don't know. Let's see.
Well, I have some.
Okay.
I have some big news.
Share.
After 10 years at Family Reentry, I have finally transitioned out.
Oh, congratulations.
Well, listen,
I don't know if congratulations is the right word, but
No. I mean, it was a wonderful run, and I'm proud to have been the executive director there for the last 2.5 years. And they gave me my start when I got back from prison, and I'm forever grateful. I'm grateful to the board of directors and to Steve Lanza, the former executive director who brought me in. And I wish the new executive director, Angela Medina, all the luck and good fortune in the world. She's very, very talented, and I worked with her at Family Reentry for about 5 or 6 years, and I am very happy it's at the helm of someone as talented and well equipped as Angela. So,
good. Well,
how about that?
Congratulations to her. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Jeffrey
Deskovic.
Deskovic. We're excited to talk to you because, oftentimes people just think criminal justice is somebody commits a crime, they go to jail, that's it. That's the beginning, that's the end. And so with this show, what we've been trying to do is just highlight, showcase, and raise awareness around as many topics that touch on hypermass incarceration as we can. So your story is quite compelling.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yes.
You know, this is by coincidence, this is the second show in the last 5 days where I was interviewed by another person named Jeff.
Oh.
Yes, I was on 360 Degrees to Success a couple nights ago with my friend Jeffrey Mark Bloom, and now I'm here being interviewed by you, Babs, and of course Jeff Grant.
Yeah, and you have a friend here this morning with you too. Who's here with you?
Yeah, so my friend Leroy Harris, Connecticut resident, is with us in studio today. He did 29 years. The Innocence Project secured DNA testing, which resulted in his conviction being overturned. But as is unfortunately all too typical, the prosecution did not want to concede that they had made a mistake, and so the end result of it all is they were threatening to continue on with the case and retry him, and he ultimately took an Alford plea, which is when a defendant maintains their innocence in front of the court, but says, "Look, I'm going to take this deal that's offered because I'm probably, good chance I might lose," and so he was really wronged yet again. But he had figured, well, I did 29 years. How long am I going to keep going with this? So, that's really his story in a nutshell.
But it got him out of prison.
It did get him out of prison.
God bless that.
It got him out of prison, sure. And, and he's interested in doing advocacy work. And so he's been watching what I'm doing in New York, and we've become friends. And we're going to be emulating some of those things here in Connecticut with Leroy at the helm. And as I understand it, off air, he'll be a future guest where his story will get the full showcase.
We'll definitely invite Leroy on and hear his whole story at some later date.
Absolutely, and it's a natural because he lives 15 minutes away. So I had occasion this morning to visit with him and his wife at his house, and then we took the short car ride over.
Leroy, where did you serve?
I was in Osborne Summers. I was in McDougal. I was in Corrigan, Cheshire, Rhode Island, Virginia. They was just.
Oh, you were one of those. You were one of those inmates who was shipped down to Virginia. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so
we'll get to your story,
Mr. Deskovic. What's your story? Because I'm reading it, but I really want you to tell it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to give you this short piece, and then whatever questions you and Jeff would like to ask, please feel free to do so. So I was arrested for murder and rape in New York in Westchester County. County not too far from Connecticut, actually. And I was 16 when I was arrested for a murder and rape, which I did not commit. I was a high school sophomore. Long story short, I turned 17. The trial commenced. I got wrongfully convicted. Despite a pretrial negative DNA test result, my wrongful conviction was caused by a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. I lost all 7 of my appeals. I got turned down for parole. And in the end, I was exonerated through further DNA testing via the Innocence Project, which not only reaffirmed my innocence, but it identified the actual perpetrator. So all my charges were dismissed on innocence grounds, and the actual perpetrator was arrested and convicted of the crime. Yeah.
So out of that experience, you are doing this work because
I'm a first-person advocate. I can't forget about the people that I, metaphorically left behind.
How did you contact them, and did Barry Schenk, Jason Flom, and all of them? How did they get interested in your case?
Sure. So I wrote the Innocence Project, and then there was an investigator, Claudia Whitman, who recommended that I write them, and she also lobbied them from outside the organization to take my case. She got several respected legal entities to take it, and then I also got lucky that the intake worker at the time at the Innocence Project, Maggie Taylor, she presented my case to the lawyer. She represented it, a total of 3 times before they agreed to take it. So that was how I got connected to them.
So
go ahead.
So you're a kid. You're 16. This happens to you.
Yes.
What do your parents say? What happens with your family around you during this time?
And where did you live?
So I lived in Peekskill. So my parents and my family, they were all shocked. They were surprised. That was the last thing they expected, me to be arrested. I mean, they believed in my innocence, but, but they all thought the system worked. So my being wrongfully convicted was the last thing on anybody's mind. And every day they was giving me a pep talk and don't worry about it. It's going to come out fine. You know, you're innocent. This is they'll determine that.
And were you in high school at the time?
I was a sophomore
At Peekskill High School?
at Peekskill High School.
And when you got arrested, were you immediately put in jail? And were you able to come out? Were you out on bail at all?
I immediately was put into jail. I got bailed out after 35 days.
Mhm.
Just as a quick sideline on that aspect of it, my mother's boyfriend at the time, Jackie Keesian, he had a carpet store, and so he bailed me out. And I just want to mention, you know, that he got a lot of negative publicity behind that, and his business got hurt.
Oh.
As a result, that became a big item, the fact that I got bailed out and who bailed me out. So I was out for the better part of a year before. And then, of course, when I was convicted, I was obviously remanded. And so I remained incarcerated from age 17 to 32.
So you're a kid, you're 16, you're 17, going through this whole ordeal.
Yes.
And so what are people saying to you? And how do you maintain a sense of strength in the midst of everything is coming against you, saying you did this thing? And I mean, did you have moments where you doubted yourself? Like,
No,
I'm just
I
trying to
never-
understand this.
Sure. No, I never doubted myself, but but just to clarify, the only people around me saying anything was really was my family, because everybody else in the community, the whole city, it hadn't been a murder in Peekskill for 20 years, so basically everybody turned on me.
Oh.
So I couldn't, everybody hated me, and every time I made a media appearance, it was this big. Every time I made a court appearance, it was a major media moment with all the publicity, guilt-oriented, presumptive.
Did you go back to high school?
They wouldn't allow me to go back to the high school until the case was resolved. Just like none of the parents of any of my friends would allow me to play with my former friends anymore.
So did they provide you high school replacement services at home? I mean,
They offered me. I never got that question before. But that's a lot of props.
I'm a former school board member.
Yeah, I see. Well, it's coming into play right now. So, well, they did offer me a tutor, sure, but I could not focus on that.
Sure.
It was impossible for me to focus. I tried a couple times and I just couldn't.
So when you are convicted,
Yes.
wrongfully convicted of this,
Yes.
so what happens? You're remanded to custody.
Correct.
And so when do you start fighting? Are you still fighting at this point?
Yeah, I was trying to fight from the very beginning. I mean, I wanted my lawyer to file a motion to overturn the conviction to stop the sentencing. So I already started, but I mean, he didn't do it. He was supposed to put moving paperwork in to support the motion, which he didn't.
But Jeffrey, what's going on? I mean, you had negative DNA.
Yes.
You must have had.
There was seminal fluid found on the victim. That's what was tested, and it didn't match me.
And did you have an alibi, for example?
I did, but the caveat is that although I told my lawyer who my alibi was and what I was doing, he never interviewed my alibi. He never presented the alibi to the court.
Well, you don't have to watch Law and Order very much to know that that's probably important.
That's very important. Just to fast forward, when I later was exonerated and I pursued compensation, when it became clear that there was a note in the legal aid file in which he documented that I told him of my alibi, and it was also clear that he never interviewed the alibi. That was why they had to settle with me during the lawsuit.
And who was the alibi, or what was the alibi?
The alibi was one of my friends. I was in the backyard at his house. We were playing wiffle ball. I had this unique. We discovered, as kids do, we had this unique way of playing one-on-one wiffle ball, and that's what I was doing.
So you do 16 years.
I do 16 years.
And so in those 16 years, what is going on? What are you doing?
All right, so a number of things. So first and foremost, I'm fighting my case, which for me means I'm going to the law library, I'm learning the law, and I'm sending suggestions to my attorneys. So that's part of it. But other than that, I'm fighting to not kill myself, because I mean, I had to fight off thoughts of suicide, hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up. I had to fight off not becoming depressed. So there's that aspect to it. It was hell in the prison itself, because I was there on a rape case. It was a murder and a rape.
Of
which
course.
there's the vigilante.
And you are a child.
I'm a
You
child.
are a child, and you're with adults.
Yes, because I'm in a
Okay.
men's maximum security prison, so I'm, it's very dangerous inside there.
What prison did you serve in?
Yeah, primarily Elmira. I did 13 and a half years there, but I also did time in Shawangunk for a year and a half, Eastern, and Sing Sing. but then I'm trying to minimize the loss I'm experiencing.
Sure.
So I took advantage of the limited educational opportunities that were there. So I got a GED. I learned to type. I took trades. I got an associate's degree. I completed a year towards the bachelor's, but then the funding was cut for that. Then I started reading a lot of nonfiction books. I read maybe 3 or 4 nonfiction books a week.
Wow.
So talk a little bit about the commonality of prosecutorial misconduct, because we're starting to hear more and more about this. When you're hearing these stories of people serving 40 years, 30 years for crimes that they didn't commit, and finding out that DNA has exonerated so many people. But when you dig a little deeper, there's a whole host of folks who sort of participate in not getting to the truth of these crimes.
Yeah, sure. So one of the common elements in that runs through many wrongful conviction cases is prosecutorial misconduct. And in response to that, that was why I joined that coalition group. It Can Happen to You, and we started out as an idea. There's a commission on judicial conduct, and the idea was, well, why shouldn't there be some independent oversight for the prosecutors in light of the fact that prosecutorial misconduct is a major cause of wrongful conviction, and it does happen run through a lot of the cases. So from idea to 6-year fight, building political and public support till it finally got passed signed into law this past May.
So there's a commission now in New York,
right,
on prosecutorial misconduct.
So tell us what prosecutorial misconduct means.
Yeah, so prosecutorial misconduct, it means that when the prosecutors do things that is considered to be legal misconduct, that's considered to be against the code of ethics, that's considered to be against case law and proper procedure. So to demystify that a bit, I'll give a few common examples.
Sure.
So withholding evidence of innocence that's supposed to be turned over, withholding other information which has to do with the witness's credibility or something that might lessen punishment. It might involve making an improper closing argument. It might involve introducing improper evidence. Excuse me. Yeah, or it might involve making inflammatory statements in the course of the trial.
Do you think that there's a problem with the culture itself? I mean, it seems that there's you'd like to believe that there's a culture of trying to get to the truth and justice, but how much does ambition really play into this, and that we reward people for wins, whether or not the win is appropriate?
The ambition is a big factor. I mean, obviously they win their case. The prosecutors, when they win their cases, then they're in line for promotions. That means more money. That means moving the trajectory to move upwards. Maybe one day being the elected official, the district attorney. The district attorney often they have political aspirations to move up to other positions, so they're using that as a stepping stone. And winning high-profile cases is part of that. Some district attorneys run their reelection campaigns based on their conviction rate, so that's part of it. But that's only one aspect. Another aspect of it, it becomes kind of like a game, like wins and losses. So that's part of it. Another part of it is tunnel vision, which is when you form a conclusion and then ignore evidence to the contrary. So there is some of that, and there is some of this not wanting to admit an error. This collegiality. Well, if I concede that this case isn't correct, then some of my coworkers, whether that's other prosecutors or even on the police level, some of their misconduct might come to light. Sometimes there's a thought, well, compensation may be paid out, and so I'm going to try to save the state millions of dollars. So let's just keep fighting and preserving this wrongful conviction to stop that. So there's some of those things too.
When I was a young lawyer, so this is going back to early '80s. The first time I appeared on in court, I was standing there, and I was representing. I just happened to have been in a firm where I had to go down there for the arraignment, and because that wasn't my thing. I was a business lawyer, but I was down there, and I saw the prosecutor, the assistant there, the prosecutor, say to one of the guards or one of the bailiffs or whatever. I heard him say, "Bring the body out."
Wow.
And he was referring to someone who would be in lockup behind the courtroom, and they referred to the person who had been arrested as the body. So if you think that's kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that is part of it, sure, because it becomes a numbers game and just names on a piece of paper. There's no thought that it's a real life person there who's the defendant.
So talk a little bit about how difficult it is to sort of get DNA back into play, because everybody doesn't have access, right? Like it's a process.
Yeah, sure. So different aspects of that. So first of all, DNA is only available in 5 to 12% of all serious felony cases. So at best, there's 88% of the cases that DNA cannot play a factor in because there simply was no evidence left at the scene. Then secondly, you have to hope that the evidence has been, has been preserved. If it's been destroyed, and a lot of states don't have preservation laws. So that's that. But then if you overcome those two hurdles, the next thing is whether you can actually get the testing. So I was trying, when the DNA data bank was created back in 1997, 98, I was trying to get further testing, and the district attorney at the time, Janine Pirro, her office would not allow me to get further testing. They rebuffed me several times, and it was only when she left office.
And so why would they rebuff? Like, why wouldn't the idea be, well, we want to make sure we get the right people put away, not just whoever we pick up?
Right. I think part of that is finality of conviction. The idea, look, we can't keep relitigating this. I mean, at some point this has to be over. But, I think there's some credibility to that as a generic. But whenever there's a reason to revisit a case, and that should be what's done for the very reason that you said, let's make sure, and particularly DNA, which is considered to be the gold standard of evidence. So really there wasn't anything to lose, but I think that they were just in conviction preservation mode.
But your case was probably a little bit different because you already had DNA
Correct.
that had been introduced.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So there's the majority of times DNA testing happens after conviction. There's maybe when I last checked, there was maybe 15 other cases that had a pretrial DNA exclusion, but it certainly was rare at that point, at least. Yeah, and it's still now. It's atypical. You might say that I was excluded by the DNA too soon.
I see.
So
in other words, if I had been convicted and then later on got DNA testing, then it could have been presented to the court as newly discovered evidence, and I would have been exonerated and released.
Yeah.
Whereas because it was done before trial and that information was in front of the jury, you can't just test it again and say, hey, this is new, because it's not new.
So how did the Innocence Project work their way around that?
The DNA data bank was created. And so we went from being able to say it doesn't match me to not only does it not match me, that's who it matches right there.
Oh, my God.
And we've seen case after case like this
yes.
over the last, maybe the last couple of decades. We've seen outrageous amounts of cases where people have gotten DNA, gotten exonerated through DNA. Is it an expensive process? Do you pay for this, or does the witness...
sometimes the state pays for it, or the court pays for it. Other times the Innocence Project itself volunteers to pay for it. So sometimes the prosecution, particularly if the prosecution starts objecting on financial grounds, then they offer to pay for it. Just to take that argument away. Okay,
so 16 years have passed. You're exonerated. You're out. You're doing this work. You're at Pace University School of Law. You're at the Elizabeth
Hobbs School of Law at Pace University.
And so you want to become an attorney?
I do. So I'm projecting to graduate. All right. So
I've been there, Jeffrey. I can tell you. We should talk.
So to take a half step back. So after being an individual advocate for 5 years, in which I did a lot of presentations, I was writing articles, I became like a quasi-public persona, doing media interviews, and I was making the rounds with the elected officials.
Well, you got a big award, didn't you?
I did. I filed lawsuits, and I was able to win some financial compensation, and so I wanted to take my advocacy to the next level, and so it's public, so I'll tell you, I committed $1.5 million to start the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice.
Your own money?
My own money. Sure. Yeah, and we were able to free 7 people in 5.5 years. But somewhere along the line in that process, though, and I don't want to minimize that. Maybe you'll jump in a second. I just want to get one thing out. I wasn't satisfied anymore. to sit in the front row of the courtroom. You know, I might be the boss of the lawyer, or I might have outlined the strategy that the lawyer I'm collaborating with is going to carry out. But at the end of the day, I'm still in the front row. I'm not addressing the judge. And so I wanted to do that. And so hence the foray into law school. And so I'm projected to graduate in May, take the bar in July. So hopefully in September, October, I'll be a lawyer.
And was it difficult to get into law school? I mean,
it was extremely hard to get into law school. So I don't do well on standardized tests. So, you know, they have the LSAT, so the law school standard, the standardized test you have to take. And so my score was low. But one of the professors, Ben Gershman, who was considered to be one of the leading experts on prosecutorial misconduct. So I had the fortune that he was sitting on the admissions committee, and so he fought really, really hard just to get me in, you know, just to give me the shot. And then from there, I had to work my tail off, and you know, it was very, very hard. It's still hard.
So your foundation has already exonerated some folks. So tell me about the very first case that you took on.
That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first exoneration was William Lopez. And so Lopez was exonerated after 23 and a half years in a shotgun murder in Brooklyn. He had a pre-existing legal team who had been with him for 9 years. He asked us to come on board and do some investigative work. So it's kind of like a building was built, but it was missing a section, and we supplied that. So we did some investigative work, and Lopez was exonerated. He was released after 23 and a half years. So what made his case leap off the pages at us is a number of things. So firstly, the early 911 call stated the person who called the police said that it was some dark-skinned Panamanian 6162, and Lopez was 5'7", light-skinned Puerto Rican, and he was 100 pounds less than the description. Then on top of that, there were two witnesses, so one of them could not make an in-court identification of him. So now it's a one-witness case, and the one witness, she said that she had been up for 24 hours, having done 12 vials of crack, and then she was in jail on her own case, lied about. She said, "Oh, I didn't get any deal for my testimony," but miraculously, after he's convicted, 1 week later, she's suddenly released out of jail.
That's terrible.
And then to harken back to the point of alibi, so his trial lawyer had talked him out of calling two people as alibi witnesses. So all of that stuff made his case leap out the pages for us, and he was exonerated. Always a special sentimental connection there because he was the first person. But tragically, he died, though. See, the thing is, he passed after a year and a half only.
Health problems relating to prison, probably.
Yeah, exactly right. He had asthma, and the prison conditions only exacerbated that. Sure.
But he died.
He died a free man, and he died as somebody whose innocence was established.
Well, how did he find out about your foundation at that point? It's new, and you're probably getting a flood of letters.
Correct.
And
yes. So when I was exonerated, I mentioned briefly earlier that I had done a ton of advocacy work as an individual advocate, and so that was making the news. And he was following me in prison through different news media interviews, and then also I was a columnist for 5 years at a weekly paper, the Westchester Guardian, and so he had his brother on the street was sending him my articles. So he was kind of following my career as an advocate. And so when I launched the foundation, that made news also. And so that was what prompted him to contact me.
That's about when I met you, right? At the TEDx Sing Sing, right? Where you were just starting the foundation?
I think I had been around for a couple of years by that point, but I started in 2011. So it was near the beginning for sure.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit. How do you decide, like, do you have a group of people that you sit with and you all look at cases?
Yes.
How do you decide, and how many cases do you decide to do? Is there a number that you want to hit, or do you take as many as you can fiscally handle? Like, what's that process like?
Sure. So there's other people that review the cases, and we talk about it collectively, and we make a group decision. I mean, that and that's one of the ways I protect myself, because I'm too close to this otherwise.
Sure.
So that's part of it. And and in terms of how many cases, it's there's layers to this. So I mean, approving a case is one thing, and then we have lawyers that we collaborate with, and we pitch the cases to them to carry out the strategies that we've mapped out, a route to exoneration, and then then from there they carry those out. So right now we have there's 10 cases in play right now that we.
And so you turn cases down, like you don't take every case.
No.
And there are some cases where I'm sure
we determine we think the person's guilty and we turn it down. So there's
and do you
there's a
tell
lot of
them that? Do you say,
no,
listen,
no,
we
no,
are
you
not.
Can't, no, because I don't want to generate correspondence that could later hurt them either. That's our educated guess, is that we think that they're guilty, but we don't know that for a fact.
So you say something to the effect that we can't take your case at this time.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. But and then there's still other cases that we're pretty sure that the person's innocent, but we don't see a route to victory. And so those are the ones that keep us up at night.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I was going to ask you,
well,
are there cases that keep you up at night that you just like, that you know, everybody has their that one thing in their life that they are, you know, always up against. And I was wondering if you have that, is there a case that haunts you and chases you and you just like, if I just keep at this, I'm sure there'll be a break in this?
Well, I feel like that about the cases that we've approved that are being worked on, but in the meantime, it's a slow process, and so the person's still inside. Now, sometimes we can still help people even if there's no way to win the case. So what that looks like is, I mean, in the normal order of things, when somebody goes to the parole board, and if they maintain their innocence as opposed to expressing remorse and take responsibility, they say they're innocent, then they're frequently turned down for parole. So what we do in that situation is we send a letter to the parole board outlining all the reasons why we believe they're innocent. And we ask the parole board, don't hold their innocence assertion against them. Just consider the rest of their application like you would any other one.
Wow.
And we're 4.
And does that help?
We're 4 for 8 on that.
Really?
We're 4 for 8 on that. So yeah, it does work.
So when they hear that, I mean, because this is all new to me. I've never even heard that. I didn't even know you could even do that. Yeah. So I find that interesting that you can tell the parole board, don't hold their
innocence assertion against them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeffrey, why don't you let Babs know and tell our audience a little bit about what a parole hearing really is?
Yeah, so a parole hearing is a board that they're appointed by the governor, and they determine whether or not they're going to release somebody. It's discretionary release, and it's on supervision. So somebody paroled is not really free. They're in the community. They're not in prison, but there's a lot of conditions around that, and there's a parole officer that goes and checks up on them, and any kind of violation, even a technical one of any of those conditions, could result in them being sent back to prison. So it's like you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. But
what's the percentage of people who are up for parole who actually get parole?
That's a very, very low percent. It's going to varies from state to state, but I know like in New York, we're like around like maybe like 12 to 15% would be my educated guess. And it used to be a lot higher than that, but then, you know, Governor Pataki became governor, and he was really conservative, tough on crime, and obviously he appointed people to serve on the parole board that reflected that outlook. And so in a lot of ways, that his impact still reverberates through the parole system, even though we've had several governors who are Democrats, but the impact of that is still the same. When like Governor Cuomo, the first Governor Cuomo, not current Governor Cuomo, that's his son, when he was governor, everybody was being paroled. You could do your time and you would go home unless there was a reason why you shouldn't. And if you got turned down for some reason, then you definitely were going home the next time you went to the board. But then that all changed when, you know, Pataki became governor.
Babs, listen to this one. How many minutes is a typical parole hearing? Do you know?
Well, my educated guess. I mean, this isn't a scientific thing, okay? And I have a master's degree also, so I think that's why I'm qualifying my answer. You know, that's maybe like 10, 15 minutes. The probably 12 it's closer to 12 than 15, and it's really, really fast.
So what kinds of things should happen when you go in front of the parole? Like, what do you prep people to get ready? Like, how? Yeah, what's the preparation? If I'm going in front of the parole board, I've already done 20 years or whatever it is. I'm slated to have this heard. So how do I prepare for that?
And you have 12 minutes, right? Yeah. On video, right?
It's on video. Yeah, the bulk of the time it's in video. It's not even in person. It's like a bad science fiction movie.
On TV, it's in person.
Circuit. No, it used to be, but then the state had the great idea that they're gonna save money. But then you can't. I mean, I went to the parole board once and I got turned down for parole, and so I have personal experience, and so I couldn't see all three commissioners, so I couldn't make eye contact. I didn't know if what I was saying was being understood. That I needed to stop, pause, and explain.
Ugh.
It was a time to move on. I couldn't do that. That having been said, to get back to your question, Babs. So, so as a prisoner, the way that you would prepare is, you would try to get as many letters of support from the community and people that you know of. Some people try to get letters even from prison personnel. So there's that. In a case of somebody innocent, if there's an organization that has reviewed your case and are confident of that, they might send a letter to the parole board, again outlining all the primary and secondary reasons why they think that you're innocent. So there's that. During your time in prison, you would take programs. So you would take educational programs, and you would take a few therapeutic programs which are designed to address the crime for which you're incarcerated. So if you're there for a violent crime, you would take alternatives of violence program. You would take aggression replacement training. If you're there for drugs or alcohol, you would take some of those programs as well. And you would stay out of trouble, and you try to demonstrate that you have been rehabilitated.
In your case, did the victim's family try to prevent your parole?
No, they did not. In my case, they did not.
But
No, that often happens. That often happens. That happens a lot.
And so the person that committed the crime instead of you,
yes,
are they still serving time?
They are. So to elaborate a little bit on that, so Stephen Cunningham, the actual perpetrator, so as a result of my being incarcerated for his crime, he remained free, and he killed a second victim 3.5 years later, who was a school teacher and who had 2 children. So he got caught for that crime. And so so for a period of 12.5 years, we were both in the New York State prison system. Not in the same prison, but in the prison system.
But
that resulted in his DNA being put in the data bank, so that when I did get the testing, that's how it matched him. But if he hadn't committed another crime and gotten caught,
he probably would still be out. He would still
be out, and I'd still be in, by the way.
Yeah. Wow. So where are you in your spirit and heart about this? Are you... So did you make some peace with any of this?
I made a lot of peace with it. I consider that my mission in life is to fight wrongful conviction, and that's how I make sense of what happened.
Because I would be mad. I don't know how long I would be mad, but I'd be mad at everybody involved.
Well, I was mad for a week, and then at the end of but after the end of the week, I realized, look, this is stupid, because first of all, it's not like I'm getting revenge on anybody by being angry. If I was adversely affecting them, then maybe I might be tempted to keep on with it. But really, I'm the only one losing in this. They're all going about their life. I'm the only one that's miserable. I want to enjoy my life as much as I can. I can't do that if I'm angry or bitter. And the vehicle that allows me to actualize that is I take that energy and I channel it into the advocacy work that I do. And at the same time, I feel like the work makes a difference. It's healing. It's cathartic. I love getting the warm statements of empathy after being in such a cold place like prison, and frequently not getting letters answered and feeling the world was cold and uncaring. So all these things kind of come together at once. That's the dynamic. Is it hard to do this? Is it hard to think about this? Is it hard to talk? Of course. Am I thinking and reliving things that I'd rather never remember again? Yeah, obviously I am. However, on the balance of it, considering everything else I told you, I feel like it's really a no-brainer. I'm gaining, the world's gaining much more than a little bit that I'm losing, and I feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose in the world.
Before we run out of time, lift up this box and
Thank you.
Put it on camera and talk about that.
Okay, so this is Recharge Beyond the Bars reentry game.
I'm gonna take a picture while you...
So sure. So it's a product that I co-own. The creator is Leslie Robinson. We're partners, and so this helps prisoners to reintegrate back into society by posing icebreaker type questions, which help formerly incarcerated people connect both with each other as well as their friends and family who have not been incarcerated. So a lot of times it's hard to talk about things that happen because you know that the person you're talking to doesn't really have a frame of reference. On the other hand, other people who have not been incarcerated, they want to know about that part of your life and the difficulties now, but they're not sure. What do they bring it up? Do they not bring it up? What do they say? What do they not say? The game steps in the middle. Recharge steps in the middle, and it has those questions. And so it facilitates great conversation deep conversations that are meaningful and healing.
Tell people how they can find this, how they can find you and find this in this product that you have.
Sure. So the product has a website, rechargethegame.com. They can find me by going to my website, deskovic.org. That's DESKOVIC.org.
You must freak your law school classmates out. Because,
I do.
Because I was in
Yes.
I was in law school, 35 years. Geez, I don't remember how many years ago now. But everyone's there kind of like coming out of college, or maybe they've had a little life experience, but nobody's there with your kind of experience.
Correct. So I do freak them out in the sense that my instructors all obviously know exactly who I am, what my story is, and the advocacy work that I do.
Sure.
So it's not uncommon that in some of the classes, sometimes early on, the teacher has me get up from sitting down as a student to come to the front of the class and instruct on a given lesson. And so that really it really wakes people up. It really it shocks them. So there is that aspect to it. I post things on the law school site regularly on Facebook. I coordinate wrongful conviction events on campus, so I'm very public with it. I don't try to hide anything.
Yeah. And
Well, we are about to leave, and I want you to leave us with what you think is the hopes and dreams in the future of what you want to be doing. Like, where do you see this going, and what do you wish would be the truth in the end?
I see this going that more that the Commission on Prosecutorial Conduct will spread to other states, eventually through the country. Other justice reforms, like we're working on discovery reform and all the different systemic deficiencies that lead to wrongful conviction. That legislation could be passed to address those deficiencies, so we can stop this from happening. And I think that that's going to happen. I mean, it's a long fight. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but I believe we do have the wind at our backs, and with each exoneration, it makes it easier for the next person to come out, and I feel like it helps just a little bit towards trying to get those policy changes passed. And so, between now and when I drop dead, I'll be doing this work.
and you put up $1.5 million of your own dollars, but I assume you accept donations too.
Yes, we certainly do. We're a 501c3 organization, and we do accept donations. We're looking for board members, looking for small donors, large donors, everything in between. People who have skills. We accept volunteers. I have this crazy idea, Jeff. There's a online crowdfunding site. It's called Patreon. So, and so
I know it. Yeah.
All right. So if you put like Deskovic Foundation Patreon, a link will come up. You click on it, go to our page. So here's my crazy idea: is imagine for a second if there was 25,000 people and they could all afford $3 a month on a recurring monthly basis. So I have everything laid out on the page, exactly how that money would be spent. We get 2 lawyers, 3 paralegals, 3 investigators, executive director, administrative assistants. I want to do fundraising, everything needed to have a really robust organization, because if we can get these kind of results on a shoestring budget, imagine if we were really fully armed for bear. So,
yes.
Wow.
So for about, I carried us for like 3.5 years. But it reached a point I couldn't keep writing a large check every month.
Sure.
So I had to get rid of the employees and convert the organization to a volunteer organization. And I appreciate the volunteers, and we're still getting it done. But really, you need employees, and the volunteers need to be supplemental, because the problem with volunteers, and even with pitching cases to lawyers rather than having in-house staff, the problem is that what's supposed to be done in 6 months or 8 months takes like 2.5 to 3 to 4 years.
Sure.
And I'm really so conscious of what it's like to be on the other end of those letters.
You can get hurt in prison
waiting
during that time period.
Very easily.
I mean,
Yeah, and the ultimate has happened a couple times. The ultimate is a negative thing has happened a couple times. I've gotten emails from people and just remove so and so from our list, because they passed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your
that,
time today,
Yeah,
Jeffrey.
so that really bothers me the most.
And I hope you come back after you pass the bar.
Listen, I want you to have me.
We want you to come back, and then we'll have a celebration, and we'll talk more about this.
Did you take the MPRE yet?
I did.
How'd you do?
I passed.
All right.
So tell us the website one more time, because people are asking.
Sure. It's deskovic.org. DESKOVIC.org.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff.
And we'll be back on the 15th with another
Jeffrey. Jeffrey Abramowitz.
This is the month of Jeffries.
Jeffrey.
So thank you, Community Foundation for Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever.
Today's show, now more than ever. And we all hope you have a good Black History Month.
Love you, Babs.
Love you too, Jeff.
Bye.